Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Is this good now? Am I good? Not frozen? Yay! Okay, so welcome again to week 37 of Coffee and Connection. We're going to jump right in because we've done all this craziness with the internet and hopefully now it's going to work. Be'ezrat Hashem. And we are going to jump into, I'm looking at the time. I'm still going to give you your full time. I apologize. But let's go to this amazing topic of habits. So I was just saying that I've learned about the topic of habits from the book called The Power of Habit. It's an amazing book. And he shares with us the scientific research that has led to an understanding of the habit loop. Okay. And there's basically three components to habits. And when we understand the three components, we can use that to our advantage to create new habits, to understand our old habits, to change our habits, right? So it's a great topic for now. And it's a great topic for any time in our lives that we want to rethink what we're doing and why we're doing it. So there's three parts to the process. The first is that we have a now I can't think of the word that I was using before. There is something that oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What's the word? A trigger. Thank you, Frama. There's a trigger, and then there's the habit, and then there's the reward. Okay. And we have to understand that all three of those are very important and we can use them. So let's just give a very practical example, right? We said about the coffee. Here we are in Coffee and Connection, right? So the trigger is I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling sluggish. I feel a little icky. Maybe I feel like I just don't have the urge to do anything. So what do I do? I reach for a cup of coffee. I drink the coffee, right? I or food. Yeah. I make the coffee. Thank you, Prema. I make the coffee. I drink the coffee and I feel good, right? And that's the reward. The reward is I feel good. Now, I might feel good because the caffeine hits. I might feel good because I sat and took time for myself, or I showed myself that I'm important with this cup of coffee, um, or I feel that just the experience of drinking that coffee gave me that splash of energy, right? I know plenty of people who say caffeine doesn't affect them. My husband being one who says, "Oh, coffee doesn't do anything for me. He'll drink a cup of coffee and go to sleep." But he still reaches for coffee when he needs to stay awake because there's something about the motion of drinking the coffee. There's something about the experience of the coffee that will wake us up, right? So there is the trigger, the catalyst, right? That first cue. Then we have the habit that is formed, and then the action, and then we have the reward. And if you have those three things happening enough times, you learn that one equals the second, which equals the third. Okay. Now, how can this show up even in our relationships? So, as I was reading the book, what I was thinking of trigger, my husband does something that upsets me, right? He says something that hurts. He does something that makes me feel like he says something I don't like. Okay. What becomes my habit? The habit may be I go into anger, I yell, I I start, I refuse to talk to him. I start telling him what to do or criticizing him, right? We can have the habit that we have built, right, off of the cue of something we don't like, right? What's the reward? So it's a good question, right? Often we do it. Why do we do it? What's the reward? It feels good. Something about it makes us feel good. We feel that we got out our feelings, or we feel like we didn't let him what's the like we didn't let him take advantage of us. We stood up for ourselves. I think I said that one already. We think that it's going to solve something, right? Like if I just tell him not to do that, he won't do it anymore, right? Or if I just yell at him, he'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, can I bake you cookies?" Right? Or whatever, can I get you flowers? So we have those three steps can still come up. Or let's think of another one. The cue may be um, I feel tired. The habit, the action is I'll go complain. The reward is I get to feel like I get to feel good. Like, look at how much I've done. Maybe I'll be appreciated, right? I hope, right? So there's all these habits. And Erica's giving me this look like that doesn't work, right? And that's kind of the point here, right? That what's interesting is that a lot of the habits we do in our relationships, do they really give us the rewards that we're looking for? Do they really allow us to then feel what it is that like, why we're engaging in that habit, right? When we run around like a chicken with our head cut off on Friday afternoon, do we get the reward that we were hoping for? Does everyone appreciate us and roll out the red carpet? Do we have this like beautiful, amazing experience Friday night because we did all of that and made ourselves and everybody else crazy, right? Does it work? So we want to look at what is that. So we can look at the reward, right? Are we really getting the reward that we're seeking from the cue? That's one thing. Okay. So that's the first question I would ask. Also, when to look at it, so let's, if we work backwards, right? If we're not getting the reward that we want, so what about is it, is it the problem that the action or the people that are responding to the action, right? We have the chance when we realize that the reward is not really a reward. We in coaching, I refer to this all the time as like, what are you getting out of it? And is it really worth what it's costing you? Right? Anything you're doing by habit, any way that you are participating in a pattern with your husband, any time that you're doing something, and it may be something you don't like. I don't like the fact that I am so stressed all the time. I don't like the fact that I lost it at my husband. I don't like the fact that I yelled at him. I don't like the fact that I respond in fear when he gets upset. Well, we only do it if there's a part of us that actually believes that there's a reward for what we're doing, right? So, a really important part of the coaching process, a really important part of real change is asking ourselves, wait, what do I think I'm getting out of it? And what am I actually getting out of it? Is that working? Is that actually happening, right? What am I telling myself is going to be the reward? And what actually is the reward? Right? Going back to that complaining thing, like we think like if we call our husbands and tell them how tired we are and how much we've done, they're going to be like, "Oh, honey, you work so hard. I'm going to pick up dinner on the way home and give you a massage and you can just go to sleep now," right? Like, and what actually happens, right, is often the opposite because what do they hear? "Oh no, she's in a bad mood, she's exhausted, she's complaining." They start to feel like they're, not doing enough. So much the opposite of what we think is going to happen in that moment, right? Just like yelling when we get upset or criticizing or telling our husbands why they're wrong is like the opposite of what will allow them to actually hear us most of the time, right? Unless you have real safety in your relationship already that they might be open to hearing it. So it's really important to recognize what's the reward that I think I'm getting, and am I actually getting that reward? Right? What is actually the outcome of this habit? Okay. Now, what we can also do is look at the cue and look at what we want, right? Look at the cue, the trigger, look at the reward, and then ask ourselves, what else can we do that will give us what we want, or that will actually give me what I want without all the negative consequences, right? Without having to do that habit. So let's say, for example, you're trying to quit caffeine. I feel for you, right? I've tried it a few times and I just felt the same and tired. So it didn't really do anything for me. Thank God caffeine is my friend. But let's say you think caffeine is not your friend. Let's say it's before a fast, or you are really trying to have a clean diet, or you are um You're trying to not have caffeine as late in the day because it's keeping you up at night. So if you're working at 10 o'clock at night, you decide, I'm not going to drink coffee. Let me have something else. So the cue, you may still feel tired, but the reward of now I'm up for the next 10 hours may not be what you want, or you may not want coffee to be your go-to. So then what you can do is you can look at, okay, so there I have this cue, I'm tired. The reward is that I want to have the energy to do what I need to do. What can I do that will give me the energy I want without the negative things I don't want? So, for example, and this is what my husband always tells me all in the late nights when I have coffee. He's like, how about half a teaspoon of coffee, right? How about like half a serving, right? Or what about, we'll quickly doing some exercise wake you up, getting some fresh air, having a tea instead, um, or some chocolate, or speaking to someone, or putting on some music and kind of getting yourself in like a positive, mindset. Will that help you? Right? So you can look for what else can I do that is more positive that will still get me my result, right? Especially if, let's say, you realize it's just self care, that feeling good about yourself that wakes you up. So you could sit and drink a tea and, look at your messages or read a book or talk to your husband or a kid or a friend or whatever and get that same pick me up that you might have gotten from the coffee, right? So, how does this connect to our relationships? Let's say you realize that the cue is I'm upset, right? I'm hurt by what he said. The reward that I'd like to have is to feel heard and understood and emphasized with and emphasize empathized with, and I want to be feel reconnected. So the habit can become, instead of yelling or complaining or stonewalling or criticizing, to expressing myself authentically and vulnerably, right? Now that may need the creation of another habit because you may not know how to express yourself with empathy and vulnerability, right? That takes time. That's a skill. It's a very important skill. It's one of the skills I teach in the Absolutely Feminine program. So, just as a side point, there's a few spots left. We had our first amazing, amazing call last week. The chat is already this beautiful, amazing community of women. If anyone is still interested in joining and jumping in, please don't hesitate to be in touch with me and we can discuss it. But again, going back to the topic, if you realize, wait, criticizing doesn't work, it doesn't get me from I'm upset to I feel heard, then you can look to learn a new skill. Let me learn to be vulnerable and authentic. Let me learn to process my feelings, another great skill, so that I realize what's really bothering me. What do I even want to express vulnerably and authentically, right? What is my own stuff that I need to work through? Let me do that. And then I'll see if there's anything I need to say, or then I'll feel better just from doing that, and you can create a whole new habit. You can also do something totally different. You could say, well, I feel crappy right now. I feel angry and I don't want to have I don't want this to lead to a fight, right? So what else can I do in this moment to like let out this steam until I can figure out what I want to actually do? I can go for a run. I can take time for myself. I can put on something that'll make me laugh. Um I can get a hug. I can ask for some, I can just say I'd love to just have a hug, or I feel hurt right now, right? We can rewrite the habit by recognizing the triggers and the reward. Now, also let's look at the trigger, right? Let's look at the cue that starts the habit. So we're looking at all three parts and seeing what can we learn from it. When we look at the cue, when we look at the trigger, a lot of times we don't even realize what that trigger is. We don't even realize that we're in a habit until we're like halfway through it, if not done. We don't even know why we are making that coffee. We don't even know why we're yelling. We don't even know why we're so upset. We don't even know why we, reached for our toothbrush in the morning. We just know that that's our habit. And it's also really important to pick up on our cues, to pick up on our triggers that are starting the habits, because then with an awareness of them, we are more empowered to like decide if we want to continue in that habit loop or not, right? When we can recognize what is the cue, we have a moment of choice, right? Because as much as our habits are great as like a way to keep our mind off of having to deal with a million things at the same time, we also are empowered. We also have free choice. And part of that free choice is in that moment when we recognize I'm about to do something and let me decide if I want to do it, right? So, and this book that I've learned this from that you're asking is called The Power of Habit. There's really two books on habits right now that are excellent. I've read The Power of Habit. It's amazing. Very like story, like he gives a lot of stories with it and like research. It's great. There's another book that I haven't yet read, but I've also seen recommended that seems to be very similar. It's called Atomic Habits. And I think that one's a little bit more practical. So it just depends on which kind of book you'd rather read. And what would I say also on that? Right. So we have the choice. We can learn to identify and become aware of our triggers. Now, sometimes we'll only realize at the end, oh my gosh, I just yelled at my husband. Why did I do that? Let me try to figure out what was bothering me. Then we'll start to notice it in the middle. Then we start to notice it just as it's happening. And then we'll start to catch it. I think it's about to happen. I'm starting to feel that. And that is really the process of change, right? So identifying our cues and our triggers is a huge part of the work of really changing our habits and changing our patterns, right? Patterns are really the habits that exist between me and my husband, right? That exist between two people together. That's when it becomes more of a pattern. When our habits are lining up, right? I say this, then you do that, then that cues that, then you're stepping into a pattern. Now, one thing that's also really important that he talks about in the book is that it's been found that no matter how much we work on our habits, no matter how much we identify our cues and our triggers and we change the actions and we focus on the victories and the rewards that we want to that we want, whenever things get stressful, whenever things get really hard, right, like I said in the questions, right, like why do I go back to my old habits when I least want to, right? Why do things get harder when like why do we struggle more when life gets hard? Is because in times of stress our brain is going to go back to the patterns that it knows best, to the habits that we have most ingrained, right, which are usually the ones we did the longest, we had since we were kids, and they're the less refined ones. So it is, so that's the nature of ourselves, but the truth is that it's also been proven that we can, that there is something we can do that allows us to overcome that, that allows us to stay in who we want to be and have the habits we want to have even when things get stressful. And that's basically through two things. One is having a community, right, where people are working together, right? The beauty of a community and the support that we give each other allows us to stay on track. And part of that, and in addition to it, is the idea of belief, right? In like AA, they say like this is that you have to, there has to be a belief in a higher power. We can definitely, connect it to our connection with Hashem and what is that all about? When we believe that what the scientific data has proven is that as soon as we have belief that we can do it, and that belief can really come from knowing that there's a higher purpose, knowing that there's a higher power, and He's helping me. He's on my side. He's my Father. He's my King. He's here for me. Knowing that it's possible because I live in a world where I have free choice and I'm able to make these choices, right? Believing that will give us the strength to overcome our habits even when things get stressful. We have to believe that we can. And I'm not getting all hippy dippy here and saying, like, well, you just have to believe and you just have to, like, believe it and it will be. What I'm saying is that this is a very active form of belief. It's yes, things are difficult. Yes, I am stressed. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, I'm really upset right now. And I'm going to choose to be my higher self. I'm going to choose to use the skills that I've learned. I'm going to decide how I'm going to show up and who I'm going to be because I believe that it's possible. I believe I have that choice. And I believe that I am more than what I'm feeling in this present moment, right? And that allows us to override our natural instincts. It allows us to override our habits because we believe in something more. We believe that we are not just, our inclinations and our habits. We believe we can be more. And with that power, we really can. It's an amazing thing, right? It's not just the STEM idea, it's a very active form of Amuna, right? It's not just, oh, everything will be okay. It's, I believe everything will be okay. So therefore, I'm going to do all I believe there's choice. I believe that that there's potential. I believe that I'm not doomed. And therefore, I will do everything I can to make that happen, right? Because I know that it will work out for the good if it's meant to, right? I believe in it. And so I'm active in that belief. So that's an amazing thing, right? We have to actually believe that we can have more, believe that it can get better, believe that Hashem wants more for us, and believe that we are capable of that. And with that power, we can then recognize our cues, recognize our triggers, be mindful about what we are doing when those cues happen, right? What choices we're making, what habits we're allowing to continue, and looking at the reward. Is it really a reward? Am I getting the reward I actually want? Perhaps I'm getting some unintended consequences, right? Let me look at those. Let me question the whole process to make sure that I'm being who I want to be and creating in this world what I want to create, because that is our power, right? That is we are in control of, is who we are being and what we are creating. And that's the power of our habits, right? So, does anyone have any questions on this? Any practical examples you want to kind of apply? You're definitely welcome to. It's really a fascinating topic, one that really can show up in so many different areas of our lives, one that we can apply to whether it's not or not we want to start exercising, to how we want to talk to our kids, to the kinds of interactions we want to have with our husbands, to how much we're davening, how much we're showing up to coffee and connection, right? So someone's asking, what if you are doing that but not seeing results? That is an excellent, excellent question. And what I will share with you is that very often when we're doing something, when we're working on something and we're not seeing results, our automatic instinct is going to be either is like to give up, or and with that thinking like maybe I'm not supposed to have this, right? Maybe it's not supposed to happen. And what I'm going to invite you to consider is that maybe the message or the reality is not that it's not meant to happen or that it will never happen, but maybe it's not meant to happen in this way, right? There's lots of different ways that we can do something. I was just telling the women in the new program, right, that if you ask a question and I give you coaching, and you apply that coaching and it's just not working, don't hesitate to say, hey, Chana, I did this and it's not working, right? This is what happened when I applied your coaching. Because one of two things can happen. It could be, number one, that there's something that we're doing and we're doing exactly what we understood very well, but we didn't understand it properly, right? There's something maybe that we're missing. There's something that we need to tweak in, something that we need to like look it over, maybe have someone help us to see, like, am I really getting this right? And there may be more than one answer. There's always more than one answer, more than one tool, more than one skill, more than one way to work towards what we want. So we don't want to just keep doing the same thing over and over and over and not seeing results. We want to do it, maybe try it again, and then we want to look at, okay, how can I tweak this? What can I try differently? What's another way that I can go about this? But not necessarily giving up right away. Looking at what's not working and why, right? And what else can I try? So we want to stay curious and open to other ways of doing things. Sometimes we're so sure that whatever it is we want to happen or to accomplish needs to happen in a certain way. It has to be, done by a certain time or in a certain way by certain people, in a certain with a certain tools, and maybe it just needs to be done a little differently. Maybe it needs something different, and then it will work, right? I think I've shared the example with you. It's really just was anyone who's been following me over the last year, watching all the coffee and connections, around over the year, I started suffering from allergies, and they were getting worse and worse. And I'd have these like flare ups where every few weeks they would just get so bad that like I would lose my voice. I'd be sneezing the whole time. I'd have my humidifier sitting here billowing like air, these like clouds on the screen. I was sucking on lozenges and drinking tea and doing all this crazy stuff because I had these horrible allergies and they kept flaring up. And I didn't know why. I was taking my allergy pill every single day and I was suffering every few weeks, just horribly suffering. And then around just before Purim, I ended up talking to a doctor because it got really bad, and it was just like I thought I might have a sinus infection. So I got on the phone with a doctor, and she said one thing. She said the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to switch your allergy pill and try to get one of the other ones that are, there's different kinds and different medications, there are different drugs. Try a different one and see what happens. And I was like, okay, great. So the next morning I went to the doctor's office, got a prescription for the other kind, for a different kind. I asked my brother what works for him because he's the only other one in the family who's not taking, everyone's taking the same thing. He's taking something different. What's working for you? So then I got the prescription and my kids went to the pharmacy for me. They came home. I took this pill, this one little pill. And within an hour, I looked at my family and I said, guys, look, I can breathe. And it was unbelievable how quickly I stopped suffering from these horrible allergies. Why? Not I was taking my pill. I was doing all the things I needed to do. I just needed to take a different pill. I needed to do it in a different way, take a different route. But you know what? People had been making that suggestion to me for months. Hey, why don't you try a different pill? And there's something in us that makes us very stuck to what we're doing, to what we're already trying. And it often takes a little kick in the butt, right, to get us moving and say, you know what? Let me try something different. Because change is scary, habits are ingrained in our brains, and it can be hard, but it is possible, right? So, let me just look at the questions that might have come up. How do you fix accountability and consistency in others so they can achieve the reward? Are you asking, like, how can you help other people get the reward that they want? So, if that is okay, so that's a very good question. Um, Honestly, we can't help, like, we can't make others change their habits, right? We can't control them. We can't make them change their habits. They're going to have to do it on their own, and that's part of the challenge in life, right? It also may be part of our own challenge. We may have a habit of looking at other people and saying, I know what you need to do, I know what would work better for you. And we may need to look and realize they need to figure this out on their own. Maybe it does work for them. Either way, getting them like getting them, as Alyssa saying, need to let go and focus on us. Exactly. If there's something, and this is such an important point, thank you, Alyssa, for bringing this up, because this is one of the biggest ways that we can allow ourselves to actually be the women we want to be and create the lives we want to create, is realizing that we spend way too much time focusing on everyone else around us, focusing on what they should be doing, what they're doing wrong, how everything would be better if this was different, if my husband was like that, if my kids stopped making me crazy, if everyone would just, do things the way I think. We spend a lot of time focusing on other people. And when we're focusing on other people, it can be great, right? And we may feel like we're getting somewhere, but we're not actually doing the work that we can do and that will make a difference for us. So anytime we're looking at someone else, I invite you to bring the focus right back to me, to you, right? And say, what can I do? And very often, what's bothering me about someone else is also something that I can work on in myself, because I only see it because it's important to me, right? So if there's a habit of someone else's that you want them to change, I invite you to look at yourself and see, how can I change that habit? How might I have that habit? How does that show up in me? Whether in how I treat that person, if it's that they're treating me this way, if it's how I treat myself, how I treat others. You want to look inward and see what's the connection, right? Do some of that mirror work, right? Like look what you're seeing in others, see how you can transfer back to yourself. Okay. Um, Okay, and then I got a follow-up. Do not see results with him is painful and is very frustrating. Your help is definitely appreciated. So you're welcome. And again, this just goes back to the question I just answered. If the results is all about him, then I invite you to start to look at, what habits can I work on within myself? What can I take responsibility for? Because we can't change others. We can change the dynamics. We can change what's happening between us, but we can't change someone else. We can't make someone change their habits. And that's why I'm really going to invite you to look at, why, looking at what is he's doing that bothers me, and that his habit that I wish he would work on. Where does that show up in me that I can work on, and keep the focus on you? Okay. And is it better to focus on one habit at a time, or trying to fix multiple? This is a great question, Chaya. Thank you so much for asking it. What's very interesting that he talks about in The Power of Habit, and this is definitely true, is that there are often I think he calls them core habits. There are certain habits that when we change them have like this, I call it a Jenga effect. Like it, well, not Jenga, what's the word? Domino. Thank you. A domino effect. I didn't make that up. A domino effect that will then result in that changing other habits. I think of that very much as like what self care allows us to create in our relationships, right? When I start to take care of myself, that allows me to be more mindful of who I am, and allows me to be more respectful of myself, which then allows me to respect others, right? So if you have a whole bunch of habits you want to change, try to see which one is like more of a core habit, which one will affect the other habits. And then I wouldn't suggest kind of like really focusing on one. You could have the other ones in your peripheral, but it is good, especially if it's something that's like time consuming, like doing something for 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes, half an hour, to see if you can work on one at a time as much as possible, so you can really give it your all your attention. Okay. I find so often that when I change something in myself, the dynamics between my husband and myself change, something improves. Exactly, Kathy. That is a beautiful reality. So when we focus on ourselves, we actually have more control, more influence, I would say. Stephen Covey explains this so beautifully, where he talks about your circle of influence versus your circle of concern. The more we focus on what bothers us, but we don't actually have any influence over, which is really anything outside of ourselves, right? Or I would say circle of control. I like to kind of make it even smaller. There's like our circle of concern, there's a circle of influence, and then there's a circle of control. And the only thing we can control is ourselves. The more we focus on our circle of influence or our circle of concern, we're going to have less power. But the more we focus on our circle of control, our influence, our control, right, actually expands. Now we have more influence, we have more power, we have more of an effect on everything that concerns us, which is a beautiful concept. Okay, everyone. Great, great question. Thank you for being such active participants in today's Coffee and Connection. It's really great connecting with you. Thank you for your patience at the beginning. And I do believe we have another Coffee and Connection. Yeah, we do next week before Rosh Hashanah. And then we'll have to figure things out around the Chagim. And I can't wait to see you then. Anyone has any questions, please feel free to send me an email, chana@absolutelyfeminine.com. So great seeing you all and connecting with you. Until next week, may we all be blessed to live, love, and be loved with all our hearts. Goodbye for now.